Do your best. These are the 3 words that my father would tell me every single morning before I go to school. My father immigrated to the United States in 1995 from Ethiopia. He would work several jobs in order to financially support himself, as well as my older brother and my mother, both of whom were still living in Ethiopia at the same time. 6 years later, both my mother and my brother arrived in the United States in July of 2001. And 10 months after that, I was born. And I became the first person in my family to be born in the United States. Growing up, my parents worked various jobs in order to support my older brother, my younger sister, and myself. My parents were very serious about our grades, and they'd always try to motivate us to go to college, to get a degree, and to most importantly, do our best. As a child, I experienced a lot of obstacles that placed me under a lot of pressure. When I was very young, my father was dying from liver failure. Along with this, my mother needed help with studying for her United States citizenship exam. And since my older brother was balancing both high school and helping my father recover from liver failure, I was tasked to help my mother study for her citizenship test, to which she passed in April of 2012. On top of all this, I was also struggling academically in school. During my time in elementary school, I was a C average student, and I would get comments on my report card that would say, Daniel's struggling in this area, Daniel is failing to complete this assignment, and so on. This immense pressure is something that's been eating me up since I was 9 years old. As a child, I felt like an absolute burden to my parents, because if I couldn't do well in school, then I'd be nothing more than a failure to them. But it wasn't until one moment in my life that allowed me to control my impact, alternate my decisions, and delete all the pressures that were instilled in me since I was a young child. In the process of learning to take control of my impact, I learned one very important thing. We as human beings are not personally responsible for the implications placed upon us by others, but rather how we use that for better or for worse. According to a study from Globalization and Health, 35% of first-generation migrants suffer from depression, 28% of them suffer from anxiety, and 47% of them suffer from PTSD. Those numbers perfectly reflect my upbringing. As a child, I used to have severe anxiety because I felt like I let my parents down each time I would come home from school with a failing grade. That feeling of anxiety would turn into depression. And to this day, each time I look back at any of my old schoolwork, chills would flood my body as it would bring me back to my younger self when I used to feel like I was nothing more than a complete failure. These emotions used to overwhelm me so much as a kid that at one moment in my life, all of them would come together and they would just destroy me. In June of 2013, I was getting ready to graduate from elementary school. Throughout 5th grade, I had grades that were fairly average, but I was still able to meet my school's requirements that allowed me to graduate from elementary school and move on to middle school. My father picked me up from school on the Monday before my graduation. He took me home, he sat me down, and he said these 6 words that still give me a nauseating sensation to this day. He said, Daniel, you're repeating the 5th grade. The moment he said this, I felt my heart sink like it's never sank before. I began to ask why. He said, Daniel, 2 years ago, I was on my deathbed. I don't want you to end up struggling in life. I'm so sorry, but I have to do this." Despite our conversation, my father would allow me to participate in my graduation ceremony, and he would speak to my teacher later that summer into having me repeat. Later that summer, my dad spoke to my teacher. And throughout 5th grade, my teacher was very familiar of the circumstances and issues that were going on with not only me, but my entire family. During their conference at my school, I was home. I was pacing back and forth, wondering what they're even saying. And then my father comes home. He comes home from the conference. He walks up to me and he says this, "Daniel, you're going to the 6th grade." The moment he said this, I said, "What?" He said, "Daniel, the moment you step into 6th grade, you better do your best ×2. I never forgot those words. On August 26, 2013, I began my first day of middle school. By this point, my father had already retired from working due to his liver failure, and my mother, who was in her early 50s at this time, was working as a warehouse worker. As an 11-year-old, I realized that my parents were pushing me more than ever to do my best ×2. And for the first 3 months of middle school, I devoted every single day to get my work done, to pay attention, and to study each and every night. During the first week of November, my school announces that we'll be receiving our report cards on that Friday. Despite the fact that I thought I was doing pretty well in school, I had this preconceived notion in the back of my mind that I was going to do so bad on my report card and that I was going to fail my parents. On November the 8th, 2013, 10 years ago to this very day, I received my report card. The moment my teacher hands me my report card, I had this jolt of anxiety rush through my body, despite the fact I didn't even open it up yet. My father picks me up from school that day. The moment I step into his car, my heart was racing. My hands were shaking. And I didn't even open up my report card yet. My father dropped me off at home, and I immediately went straight to sleep just to get rid of all the nerves that were in my body. Later that night, somebody wakes me up, and it's my older brother, and he asked to see my report card. And without wondering how he knew I was going to receive my report card that day, I handed him my report card. And as he was opening up the envelope, everything started to happen again. My heart was racing, my teeth were chattering, and my hands were just shaking until he said this, "Daniel, you got a 3.4 GPA. The pressure subsided at that very moment, and I began to cry tears of joy. It was at that moment that I realized that I was no longer a burden to my parents, all because I did my best ×2. Although that pivotal moment happened, more work had to be done in order to delete that pressure once and for all. In the fall of 2020, I began my first semester of college. This was it. This was the moment I've worked my entire life for. This was the moment my parents had been waiting for since the day I was born, the day that I start college, in the most unique way possible. When I started college, it was during the lowest point of my life. I was 18 years old. I had no idea how to navigate through college, nor how to navigate through an online school year. And despite the fact I've earned nothing less than a 3.0 GPA since middle school, that pressure began to build back up inside of me. And that resulted in me experiencing several mental breakdowns. And I would even ask myself each and every day if I should even keep on pushing forward. I ended that semester with a 3.4 GPA, but I barely made it through. During my second semester of college, I had a meeting with one of my professors, and the topic of religion was brought up. My professor was a Christian, and he would occasionally mention about his beliefs to me and my classmates. Growing up, I wasn't very religious, and I had no desire to hear about Christianity, faith, the whole nine. But each time he would bring it up, it would always spark my interest, because at this time in my life, my anxiety levels were running through the roof. One day, I decided to go on YouTube. I decided to watch several testimony videos as to how people found Christianity. After spending half an hour watching these videos, I decided to watch one more. And this one really grabbed my attention. It was a video about a man named Steve Borden. And the topic of anxiety was mentioned throughout his entire testimony. This prompted me to do a little bit of research, and I found this verse in the Bible that says, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, which reads, "Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you." I felt heard. It's a feeling I wish my 9-year-old self could experience. I was able to finally place all of my anxiety, all of my anxiety, all of my trauma onto something that would allow me to be the person that I am today. And at the end of that spring semester, I finished off with a 3.2 GPA. And the following year, I graduated from community college with a certificate in mass communications, and Associates of Applied Sciences in Mass Communications, while being on the president's list. This upcoming May, I'll be graduating here at Towson University with a Bachelor's of Arts in Mass Communications, along with a minor in Electronic Media and Film. I feel like I did everything that I needed to do to make my parents proud. After all of the hard work that they've done for me, and after all of the hard work that I've done for them, I've ensured them that I did my best times two. Now that I've grown and become my own person, I want to give a piece of advice to those that have either been or will be in my situation. Your circumstance is not permanent. You are not identified by your trauma. Always remember that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And just like my father would say, no matter what, do your best. Thank you.